All right, good morning and welcome to the May edition of the Parkland Workforce Collaborative. Happy to have everyone here today. Our speaker today is going to be Alicia Beck, Senior Director for Workforce Development at Parkland. I'm actually on her team here. And Alicia has a multi-generational team and has some really great strategies for leading Gen Z and creating a supportive work environment for individuals from all generations. So I hand it over to Alicia.
Awesome. I think I am sharing my screen. Is that correct? Are you seeing like a welcoming Gen Z to the workplace slide?
No.
Oh my goodness, I'm failing already. See, this is why we have Gen Z in our offices so that they can help us through the technological errors that we inevitably make. Okay, I think I just chose the wrong one. Okay, now I should be sharing it. Awesome. So I am really glad to be with you today to talk about this topic that is super near and dear to my heart. My son is a Gen Z, and I'm betting that some of you also have Gen Z family members and also folks that you work with that are in the Gen Z population. And I thought that today, we could talk a little bit about some things that really are necessary for us to be aware of when we're thinking about welcoming Gen Zs to our workplace, but also things that really are kind of inclusive of everybody, because we're not just talking about best practices for folks that are new to the workplace. These are things that I think can be really beneficial for working across generations as well. We're a multi-generational office here in the workforce development area at Parkland, and I have representation in every generation that's currently in the workforce. And there are times when I look around the table and I can see the reactions happening around the table that are a little bit, different for each generation. And it's super interesting to watch for me. This is something I feel really excited about talking with you about, and hope that we can have a little bit of conversation as well as we move through this today together, because I've prepared a few questions. So I'm hoping that we can both get on camera and talk with one another, but then we can also maybe just have some time to chat as well. So, I think most folks understand what the makeup of our Generation Z or Zoomers are in the workplace, but I thought we'd just briefly talk a little bit about who, oops, what's going on with my slides? Who is work in the workforce now that's entering in this generation, and what are the characteristics that we generally see? And I'm going to relate these sort of bolded characteristics to each of the areas that I think are really important for us to be aware of as we're working with new folks in the workforce. So we're talking about people that were born between 1997 and 2012. My son was born in 2002, so he is right in the middle there, sort of more of an early Zoomer, but he is definitely a Gen Z population. So I know that our oldest Gen Z population, which is, of course, those folks that were born in 1997, they're starting to get to be almost 30. So we're excited to see them doing new things in their careers and growing. But we, of course, know that most of these folks are digital natives. They did grow up with smartphones and all of those kinds of social media pieces. So multitasking really does come naturally for them, working across multiple digital platforms. Of course, they're social media fluent, and we know all of the pieces that come along with that. They're really good at self-expression on those media. And one of the things that's important to know about them that we'll talk a little bit more in depth about is their value of authenticity and transparency. They are really skeptical of this is the message, and then we all just kind of go along with it and we don't ask questions. They do expect you to be very honest and direct with them. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to manage that in the workplace. Diversity driven. So they are really the most diverse generation yet in terms of racial and ethnic identity, as well as lots of other identities that incorporate an individual's overall sense of self. So it's important for them to be very individual and to have inclusive activities that allow them to be to express who they are. Mental health consciousness, of course, is an important element that we do know about this generation. They expect that their employers are going to provide wellness support for them. Financially cautious and practical. They grew up, of course, as we know, during a lot of economic instability during the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things that we'll be talking about later is how they really are focused on job security and the return on investment for education. And that's going to express itself in ways that maybe we're not thinking about. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And they're very entrepreneurial and independent. They like freelance work. That really does play into this whole financial, cautious, and practical piece, believe it or not. They really are self-reliant. They are cautious about entering into a workplace that they feel may not want to continue to support them. So they know they can rely on themselves. They're very independent and entrepreneurial and do create autonomy in their work. Also very purpose driven. They want to know that the work that they're doing matters, not just from a social perspective, but that they're not doing busy work, that what they're doing is actually contributing to the overall goal of the organization. And then, of course, they really love hybrid work. Being able to have that flexibility and being connected to their work environment remotely is really important to the generation, as I think it's become important to many generations now. So managing generational gaps, I think is, part of this overall conversation really, and to be better employers, reduce the gap by putting their subjective opinions aside. I think this is a great quote by Scott Greenberg from a trades journal for bakers. And he was talking about, welcoming Gen Z to the food service industry, in particular, restaurants and other food businesses, but talking about how being a good employer really is about putting our subjective opinions aside about employees and understanding them in a different way. So I want to first introduce this topic with a video, and bear with me as I navigate to the actual minute that I want to start with, because this is a lengthy video that you can go back and take a look at in its entirety later on, but we're going to start right here. So she kind of mentions shoulder pads at the end. She referenced that at the very beginning, that one of the things that somebody had told her as a millennial that what she needed to do to be successful in the workplace was to be sure that she wore shoulder pads so that she had broad shoulders and had a presence. And so at any rate, that video is a couple years old, and it was before shoulder pads made their way back into the fashion world. So they are available now, but at the time were not available apparently. So at any rate, if you're a shoulder pad wearer, I guess that's a good thing. But managing generational gaps is really where we're at today, and talking about not just how to manage Gen Z, but I'm a Gen Xer. I have certain expectations of how the world should work in my paradigm, but I am always trying to set that aside to try to understand a little better about how I can interact with others and where they come to me at. I'm a social worker by training, so I have a master's in social work. And so I think about things in what we call a biopsychosocial sort of way. And we look at those sort of three frameworks to think about how those three things are affecting an individual or a group of individuals or a whole society. So when I'm thinking about working with an individual, I'm doing what we call meeting them where they are. And I'm really thinking about all of the things that affect them as an individual, the biology of who they are, the social influences that have made them who they are, and then the psychological pieces of who they are as well. So those are all pieces of a human being that really are individualized, because each one of us has a different experience. And that's going to be true of the folks that come to us from Gen Z. It's going to be true of people who come from Gen X. And each one of the generations, while we may have some overarching themes within our generations of our shared experiences. My experience as a excuse me, Gen X is very different than the experiences of people that are 10 years older than me that are considered to be Gen X. So the first thing I want us to think about as we're thinking through how to meet and welcome in this newest generation and incorporate them into what is a growing workforce for us. What is your biggest challenge as you think about this newest generation joining the workforce? And this could be particular to this generation. It could be just your overall biggest challenge as a company or as an organization, but you can put it in the chat if you like, or if you want to come on camera, raise your hand. We'd love to hear what your biggest challenges are currently in the workforce.
As a newer supervisor, I'm concerned about like the things I think a new hire wouldn't know. There's a lot more there. If I'm not explaining it well, but what they don't know and me anticipating what they don't know, I think it's a greater deficit than I'm aware of. So there's more training they need, more engagement, and I don't necessarily know what that is because I'm not that familiar with individuals in that generation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Amy. And, I was reading as I'm reading materials because I love to read about this topic and how we can best welcome folks that are in this newest generation. And I was reading an article, and I'll reference it at the end as well, by a man who is an owner and president of a machine shop in Connecticut. And one of the things that he talked about in his article was that many of the people that are currently coming into the workforce, they may have technological and maybe skills, and they're digital natives as we talked about, but many of them don't have the deeper historical perspective of, let's say, computer languages, that maybe some of his folks that are currently working in the shop and maybe in their 40s or 50s have, because they were at the forefront of the newer languages that were being used in computer programming for the different machines that they're using. And so that deeper understanding can be really helpful to those younger generations. So being able to figure out how to navigate that with younger generations to provide them with that contextualized information so that they can be better machinists, but also so that they can be, sort of brought into the culture of that organization and where it's evolved from. Others?
Got a comment in the chat from Anna at CKS Packaging, training for consistency and recognizing employees in a meaningful way.
Yeah, those are great comments. We're going to talk a little bit about those, a couple of those things actually today. Those are two important topics when you think about information sharing for this generation. They really do want information. Think about all the information that this generation has access to and always has, right? When I was going to school, I had to go to the library and look things up. I had to request books coming from another library that would then come to my library that I could read. And it would take weeks, right, for all those things to happen. But now there's a lot of information. There's maybe even information overload. There's also that process of learning what's valid information and what's not valid information, right? So that's a big piece of also, bringing this workforce into our businesses, because we need to help them understand where to get their best information from. So, some other challenges that, I hear folks talking about in general is retention and longevity for employees, because, they say there's no loyalty in this generation. But I think that one of the things that we really need to be aware of is meeting the needs of the current workforce. And when you're meeting their needs, they're an extraordinarily loyal group of people. They really are. If you are really attentive to the things that they are wanting the most. I think that it not only benefits the particular generation that we're talking about today, but when you institute programming that is wanted and desired by this generation, it really does cross over generations. And I think one of the beauties about talking about generations in general, although I don't like to overly stereotype or generalize a generation, I think when a new group of people come into adulthood and start to join the workforce and they have maybe new demands or different ideas, it really does help us grow and become different and to maneuver in the world in different ways that I think can be really exciting. All right, so I am going to go on to our next slide. And if you have thoughts along the way, feel free to put those in the chat and Amy will definitely pass those along to us. So increasing information sharing, it is our first topic. So as I said, I'm going to reflect back to the things that are a little bit more about the that identify this generation as special. Those will be on the bottom. So you'll see that increasing information sharing really echoes back to them being digital natives, social media fluent, they value authenticity and transparency, and they're purpose driven. So we'll talk about how those things do influence some action steps that you can take and how best to align those with what it is that may be best practices for this generation. So they really, as I said, are accustomed to real-time information access. So we talked a little bit about that already and the implications for that. And as a result, of economic uncertainties and global events, their anxieties and desire for transparency are much higher. So the frequency of information sharing as a result is something that really needs to happen to increase. So maybe you're used to having sort of a monthly update that goes out to employees, or maybe it's just a quarterly update. This may require you to increase the number of information sharing pieces that you send out to those folks, and accessing how they like to access information is an important piece of it. One of the things that I do to create a much more open access and opportunity for people to get the information that they're looking for is to establish two-way dialogues in a communication channel that my employees prefer. So I kind of ask them when they first come on board, like, how do you like to receive information? And sometimes that's an individualized response, and sometimes it's an overall office-wide response. And that might be an overall business response that, take a little poll of your folks to find out how do you want to receive information and how do you prefer to communicate? Because I think that there are people who really like face-to-face communication. There's people that really like texting. And then there's other people that, they just want you to tell them the highlights, and others want the details. So I think that finding a way to be able to give everybody what they are needing is really important. So let's just give you an example. If you are doing an information piece that's going to be going out to your employees, maybe at the top is an opportunity to kind of do that bullet point, large topics that you want to be able to convey to people. And then below that, some more detailed information that might be additional information that people might want. And so that way people can digest the information as most appropriate for them. A lot of my folks like to communicate using sort of a work-based chat system. So we do use Teams in our office a lot. And that really does provide a nice opportunity for two-way dialogue. We do regularly have team strategy and performance and future outlook meetings. So each quarter we come together and we actually create these goals together. So getting feedback on areas needing clarity, transparency is an important piece of it, but also providing people with an opportunity to really dive in and understand what the goals of the organization are, and then helping to create the plan to get to those goals. It's really part of being purpose driven. They want to know what it is that that ultimate goal is that they're contributing to, and then how can they individually contribute to that. So if you're talking about a business that's more of a hands-on business where you are serving customers, maybe through food service, or you're working in a manufacturing environment. It's really talking about what those quarterly goals are, but then understanding and helping people to see what their individual contributions are, and information sharing back and forth about how those goals are being met over time. So let's talk a little bit about your best practices for communication with your staff. How are you communicating with your staff? Now, I referenced using Teams, but I think one of the best practices that we've started here is in my smaller department for support for workforce training. We have our quarterly objectives and key results, OKRs, that we work on. And we know what our overarching goals are that I set for that I do, as long as with other leadership, set for the organization. And then the staff in turn sets what their individual plans are going to be for those overarching goals and how they're going to contribute on projects to get to those OKRs. So we're constantly reviewing that each week during the quarter. And then at the end of the quarter, we reevaluate and say, what are the things that we're going to be working on? Again, people commit to projects or certain outcomes that they're going to be responsible for, and we do it all over again for that quarter. It's a continual improvement process for us. There's not an end goal for it to be complete and always done. It's to help sort of elicit this continual improvement process idea in everybody. So let's talk a little bit about what your best practices are. Would anyone like to share? I know we have some out there, so don't be shy. You can type them in or just come on mic.
This is Anastasia at CKS. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So one thing that we do as a leadership group, we talk every week on Teams in a KPI meeting. So we kind of are always kind of aligned, going in the same direction. Part of the process to even get to the KPIs was a balanced scorecard for some areas, so we kind of know what direction we're trying to move towards. And then we do weekly one-on-ones with everyone to make sure we're still going in the same direction. Other than that, most of it's informal through chat like you guys are doing, as well with communication sharing. Although I do a lot with transparency, especially with, this generational group where, I invite them to give me feedback so they get comfortable and they kind of build that strength with it. And then I do the same. It just becomes a very natural process and a very transparent process. I think that really helps.
Yeah, those are great examples, Anastasia. I think that, the frequency of communication in many different ways is really important, and giving people an opportunity to have those one-on-one meetings where they can ask more detailed questions or raise concerns, I think is, or give ideas that they have, I think is a really great practice. Anyone else like to share something?
Page from Carl put in the chat that communication can be difficult with a large organization, but utilization of multiple avenues help, such as team department meetings, one-on-one rounding with team members, Teams messages, emails, texts, etc.
Yeah, that's a great point. Having the multiple communication channels can be so important. I think, what do they say? People have to hear it 7 times before they hear it. And so it's important for us to be able to deliver that message in maybe multiple ways, and people are consuming those multiple ways even, but having them to receive the message in a variety of different ways, they're going to hear it. All right, so we'll move on to the next thing. What I want to touch on is showing clear career pathways. Whew, that's a tough one to say. As I said, they really value job security and clear advancement opportunities. And this echoes back to the fact that they are a financially cautious and practical generation and entrepreneurial and independent. Being able to provide a transparent performance metrics and advancement criteria is really important for people in this generation. I call this the rubric generation because they have always had a rubric on, that told them that this is what they're supposed to do. And if they do all of these things, then they will get the points. So, they thrive on that model, and being able to really be able to give them a rubric style performance metric is really helpful to them. They want to know, how many times do I have to do this thing in order to advance to the next level? And so, defining for them what success looks like in various roles can be really important. Every role is going to, of course, have its competencies that we find valuable, and they need to know exactly what that looks like. So having those individualized conversations with people can be really important, but also having a designed pathway for people can be an important element. So the building the relationships with individuals and collaborating with them to create those plans is a great way to begin. But facilitating some open conversations about salary and pay equity is really important to this generation, and knowing what having them understand the greater scope of what the organization is like can help with those conversations. And what it is, one of the pieces that we really point to, of course, for this, that we think is extremely beneficial for this generation and really all generations, is the apprenticeship model. We really think that the registered apprenticeship model is a great model, but apprenticeship models in general are really beneficial for this particular generation because they do want to know what's it going to be like once I'm into this position and I've done this thing this many times. Am I going to advance in pay? Am I going to advance in my role? And an apprenticeship gives you that very structured way to advance to the next level of your profession. So being able to also talk a little bit about how they can use tools to do that in the workplace. So one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about is, what kind of tools do you all have in your workplace or resources do you have in your company that you can use, or what resources do you need to create more defined career growth opportunities? Let's focus on the needs in this question. What resources do you need to create a more defined career growth opportunity for your current workforce, as you start to think about, oh, these are the things that we don't have that would help people with that? And these could be anything from access to education, educational opportunities, reimbursement of education, a structured progression of job skills that might be beneficial, or even a openness of job descriptions, so people can understand that this is what this job description does, and if I wanted to do something that was more expansive, then I would need to start to work towards this job description, and what those competencies are related to them.
Quite a few years ago, I did a fun project with our group, and we did kind of a marketing campaign on career paths. So we had all kind of like, roles that we were looking to build for the future, as well as roles we had right then and there. And we showed like, different ways you can get on there. But it was actually a big poster almost. It was, thick cardboard poster, and we had them up all over like one whole wall so people could walk and see it. But it ended up being a surprisingly really good tool that we used for onboarding, as well as just for future employees to see different paths they could take and to really encourage people to apply for more jobs.
That's great. Can you give an example of like what one of those career pathways, how that was kind of laid out for folks?
Sure. So we would do even so be like an operations manager role, for instance. And it would have, this was a call center at the time, and so it'd have people in the call center, and it would literally show different jobs they could take to get up to that level. And it actually even had some of the training. This company was fantastic with training, which really made a big difference. And we even had training that people could sign up for that would be voluntary, not on the clock, but we did that as well as part of a development program. So it kind of tied in all together.
Yeah, that's a great example. I love that because it kind of ticks a lot of the boxes, right? It's ticks the communication box, it ticks the transparency box, and it really shows that how an individual can grow in their career within your company. So it kind of it ticks a lot of the boxes that I know light up the Gen Z folks, but it really does, if you think about it, appeal to cross generations because it makes it a little less mystical and a little more, okay, if you do these things, you can move up in this organization and shows people how they can really actually do it. And that's awesome. All right. I love these ideas we're hearing from folks today. Explain how individual contributions matter. That's a super important thing. They don't want to feel like they're doing busy work. Who does? Nobody wants to come to work and feel like they just pushed that piece of paper for no reason, right? I mean, people want to see how what their role is aligns with the organization's goals. And that can be anything from I'm today's busboy working and cleaning tables. How is my role aligning with the overall organizational goals in providing a pleasant dining experience for your customers and being able to help people buy into that is a really important thing. So encouraging team members to share their unique skills and growth areas is an important piece of this because they may have skills, they may have areas that they're really interested in growing in that can contribute to your organization's growth as well. One of the things that I've done here as people are thinking about coming, and we do a lot of one-on-one meetings with staff because I want to make sure that people feel like they are giving an opportunity to communicate to me what their needs are. And within the context of those meetings, we're really looking at what unique skills and growth areas people do have and how they'd like to contribute to the overall success of the organization. So if you kind of go back to those OKRs that I was talking about, those objectives and key results that we work on each quarter, we really try to highlight those unique skills that each individual has. And so it may not look like that would be typically be something that someone would be assigned to do. But if someone's like, I really want to learn how to do that better, or that's an area that I think I need to grow in, we'll provide that opportunity to someone. Or that is an area that I feel very excited about, and I know that I have a unique skill that can contribute to that, then we'll provide people with an opportunity to work on that. So it's really a decision that we come together as a group on, but ultimately it's providing the opportunity for people that's really the most important piece. So creating dialogues about each person's contribution to team success is super important. Highlighting how organizational goals positively impact society, of course, is another big thing for this group. Purpose-driven and value authenticity and transparency are the two pieces of the overarching descriptions of this generation that kind of relate back to this particular piece that's super important to them. So when we talk about your organizations, how does your company or organization, does it have a structured program to highlight accomplishments? And, help us understand that a little bit better if it does. Can you share those practices? One of the things that we do in our division here in my staff meetings is we call it wins for the week. And sometimes it's every other week or once a month, depending on the frequency of the particular group that's meeting. Underneath my support for workforce training programs, we meet weekly, and we call it wins for the week. And so everybody gets to go around and talk about a win, a highlight of one of their accomplishments.
Mm.
Sometimes people talk about their personal lives, something happy has happened for them, and other times they're talking about oh, I was able to complete this project successfully, or I had these outcomes for this project. So people are also getting to talk about the things that are most important to them personally, and then we get to celebrate those together. And that's a super exciting way for people to share information with each other that they might not otherwise have the opportunity to do. But I think the other thing it does is it helps them start to think about what it is that how they're contributing to the overall success of the organization. If they're highlighting their own personal wins, what does that look like on a very small level, on a big level, on a collaborative level with other parts of the organization? So we do that every single week. So sometimes folks have to really think hard, and it really makes them also think about their individual contributions on a weekly basis.
Mm. Yeah, ours is pretty unstructured here at CKS. But what we do, which I think is kind of fun and kind of cool, is that we have every Thursday of a safety meeting / operations meeting for every shift. And so the day before, or a couple days before, the plant manager will go to each shift and he'll find something that people did fantastic. And so then we'll go to the meeting and we'll talk about what they did fantastic, and then we'll give them a gift card too. So not real
Love it.
structured, but it's kind of cool. And it really talks about the storytelling element you're kind of mentioning in this as well. So kind of like, what success looks like for the organization, the stories we talk about, and what the norms are, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Tying back the accomplishment to the organization and the norms, I think is an excellent way to put it, because you want to make sure that you're highlighting what it is that you want to promote in the organization as well, the behaviors that you're looking for, the accomplishments that you're looking for, and rewarding those in front of other people is a great way to do that. All right, if anybody else has something they'd like to share, hop on. I'll give you a second to do that. And if not, we'll just keep on moving through my slides. I want to make sure we get through all this information before the hour hits us. So the next thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about was providing autonomy. This keeps people moving forward, obviously, if you give them the opportunity to exercise the independence. And this particular generation, micromanagement definitely hinders their motivation and creativity, but they do like to ask a lot of questions. So they don't want you to micromanage, but they do want you to be available to answer questions when they need it, and provide support. So having an open door is a great thing, but also providing those regular check-ins with people in order to give them an opportunity to ask questions, or for you to do some mentorship with them in order to help guide those questions is an important piece. So allowing for experimentation and self-directed work is super important. And this can, you need to give people guide rails, of course, because you don't want to give somebody something that's going to be outsized for what their skill set is. But let me just give you a brief example. I have an employee who really was interested in knowing more about budgets and how to maintain a budget. So I gave them a budget line item to be responsible for. And of course, I was ultimately responsible for that, but they were responsible for creating the plan and and how to manage that budget line item. And so then I was there regularly checking in with them, helping them to plan and how best to strategize to work on that budgetary line item. And that has now expanded into other opportunities for this particular employee to do more budgetary work. So I think that helping to do things in incremental and guided ways can be super beneficial for people as they're trying to keep moving forward in those skills, but providing opportunities for people to lead projects or initiatives that are new to them, where they're exercising those skills and giving them support for the ideas for improving work processes is a big piece of that as well. So, really looking for feedback from people and then telling them, empowering them to assist you in improving that work process. So if you are looking for ways to improve communication with your staff, and then you are requesting that information from people, then maybe there's an opportunity there for someone who is motivated and interested in those communication pieces to help you to create those new opportunities for communication. So maybe, if you do decide to do something like the posters that we were talking about earlier, maybe there's somebody in your organization who is very excited about creating those career pathways and would want to help you think through what those things look like. Somebody who's not really at the management level maybe, but just looking to continue to grow their opportunities and learning. So one of the things that, is important in this whole piece is offering specific and constructive feedback. This particular generation does really appreciate real-time and actionable feedback. They don't want sort of the general, platitudes that come with feedback. They want specific areas that they can grow in and specific ways that they can improve that are measurable. So that goes back to the rubric that I was talking about. They've had rubrics for learning from the time they were, in kindergarten on up. And so understanding what it is that they're working toward is not just about giving them the words, it's about giving them the actual actionable steps that they need to take. So using coaching questions and promoting self-reflection is a big piece of this. So giving homework before you have a one-on-one meeting with someone to help them reflect on some questions. I'll give you a tool for that actually at the end that I find really helpful and I use all the time. Facilitate discussions on building resilience and emotional intelligence. That's a big piece too. So there's always room for us to continue to have deeper dialogue in the workplace about how we can, as individuals, promote our own self-improvement to benefit not only the things that we're trying to accomplish, but the overall accomplishments that we're trying to bring to the world. So, emotional intelligence, of course, is a very important piece of that whole construct. But if we can continue to give guidance to people as they're joining the workforce about what emotional intelligence really looks like and what the actionable steps that they can take toward developing emotional intelligence is, I think we could really continue to grow their opportunities for things like mental health wellness, because that's a big emphasis of this particular generation that we'll touch on. So how do you all provide mentorship in your workplace? Any ways that you specifically are, promoting, or are there things that you'd like to do to promote mentorship in your workplace?
So we don't have any specific program that's formalized for mentorship, but I think it's fantastic whenever you do. I will tell you, my last company, we had just piloted, this is for manufacturing, a really cool buddy system. And it actually, it provided extra income for the people that were buddies, and these were for new hires. But it was structured. There was training involved, and what was really cool was the results. I mean, the retention was incredible. I mean, you're talking about a 40% increase in retention when they didn't even have that great of formalized training. So it was unbelievable, the difference. And that was probably the best example I had, recently there. But I wanted to mention too, on your last slide, I think what you're talking about there it's very difficult when I'm trying to train new managers. Sometimes people will feel like if you don't have the relationship, for instance, that they're getting set up Like for instance, this is a trap or something. I think sometimes it's all about how you frame the conversation. Hey, I want to, let's just try something new. I want to challenge you with this, make sure they feel very comfortable when you're having these conversations. Otherwise, I've noticed it's been very difficult for some of our managers here to handle the situation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it all really comes down to having conversations and buy-in about what an individual really wants to accomplish as well. I mean, we really have to make sure that I know that when I'm assigning new projects, I like to really point out, like, you've done these things well in the past, and that really applies to this particular project. And so I think that you would be great at doing this. And what are your thoughts about that? Was that something that excites you? And I think that, like you said, relationship is a really important piece of it, and making sure that you have the buy-in from somebody in that relationship, that you're working from a shared pool of information is a really important piece of it. And mentorship is really, a lot of it is about you can have a formal mentorship program, but a lot of it is building a culture of mentorship, right? Being able to understand that your place in the business, your place in the organization can benefit from just developing relationships across the organization. Even if you are at a senior leadership level, you can benefit from mentorship from people in other parts of the organization. And so mentorship can take lots of different forms, and it can really sometimes just mean helping me to grow my skills in a particular area. An older employee could be mentored by a younger employee on a skill that they don't have. But then there can be an exchange, that the older employee has skills that the younger employee doesn't have. So there can be a co-mentorship as well. So I really like that buddy system. I think that's a great way to put it. One of the articles that, I've read over time points out that, having that buddy system with an older employee and a younger employee can be really beneficial for that cross-pollination of skill. And also benefits the younger employee because they can be sort of brought into the culture of the organization and understand a little bit more about the history of the organization as well.
We have a comment in the chat from Paige from Carl that they have a mentorship program across the organization and a different new leader mentorship program that helps leaders who are new to the organization or just new leaders in general.
That's great. That's great. I like a good leadership mentorship program. I'm all about that.
I have personally tried to take a bit more of a coaching approach where when I get asked questions from less experienced employees, I'm trying to ask, how have you done this before? Or what path would you take without me giving you any information as opposed to just giving the answer? I took Parkland's Leading Edge series through community education, and in that learned that if you give someone the answer, they'll just keep coming back for the answer. Whereas if you help them figure it out themselves and give them that confidence, that then they're more likely to figure it out on their own in the future. So I'm really trying to take that to heart.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Sometimes giving people the tools to be able to solve problems, I think, is one of the biggest things that we can do in that mentorship relationship. Because, the specific piece of information is important to, share, but it's really the process of acquiring that information. I think that's the most important thing to help foster in others. And speaking of fostering things, fostering community and connection, you know, they're really, really connected. This generation is digitally, but they oftentimes will report feeling isolated socially. And of course, this, also echoes back to their preference for remote or hybrid work, which can, limit those opportunities for meaningful interactions. But this is true for people who are showing up physically to the workplace as well. Overall, overarching in the United States and in the world, people are starting to feel lonelier and they are starting to feel more isolated. And that is across generations. So I think anything that we can do to provide intentional opportunities for our teams of people to come together in a common way that is, it doesn't even have to be such a strict team building activity. It can really be a way for us to just build human connections with one another so that we're having conversations and sharing information that is beyond the boardroom, so to speak, so that we can create nice bonds with one another. One of the things that I do, and I started doing a couple of years ago, is I started hosting what we call Cobra Connections in my department. And we would invite departments to come to have a social piece with us during the workday, during one of our staff meetings. So we'd invite, for example, marketing, or we invite people who are in admissions, or we'd invite the whole office to come, and we can share information for a brief period of time about what your office does and what our office does. But then there was always a social piece involved in it. Because even in an organization that seems relatively small, like Parkland, we can work in silos sometimes, and we may have communicated with someone over email a number of times, but never actually met them in person, even though maybe they're in the same organization, in the same building even. So in order to help foster those connections, we started having these things because it's a lot easier to be kind and patient with someone when you have shared a snack with them and told them about your dogs than when you have never ever met them. So having those individual conversations, those connections across, different generations, across different departments, has been an important piece for helping us to grow as an organizational team. And I wanted to just point out this one particular, but this is the business owner I referenced earlier. His name is Mark Rolfs. He's a third generation machinist and owner of East Coast Precision Manufacturing. And they have, as a machining company, have started arranging extracurricular activities outside of the shop, recognizing that, members of the Gen Z generation are really eager to attend these kinds of events and activities. And they're a great way, obviously, to connect with employees of all ages and to inject a little fun into the workplace. So I think that having those opportunities cross-generationally can be super beneficial. But obviously, Gen Z is very excited about these opportunities as well. So one of the things that I like to talk about is the fact that they are oftentimes wanting those connections, but just need you to assist in creating them. Prioritizing wellness and mental health is an important piece. Obviously, we talked a little bit about that. So being able to and get comfortable with being uncomfortable and discussing mental health openly. Offering benefits like mental health days and access to counseling is important. And thinking about mental health training resources and communication tools. So you might even think about doing something like providing opportunity for your employees to have access to an online app like Headspace that would provide for meditation opportunities or other quiet opportunities of reflection, or providing them with online texting for mental health services. So there's lots of ways that you can do that outside of an EAP, but an employee assistance program is also a great way for you to continue to cultivate those mental health tools that people may have or may need to have. So my last question for you then is, how does your organization prioritize health and wellness? And what does that mean to you? What does prioritizing health and wellness mean to you? And just to give you a few examples, it could mean as simple as, we provide access to mental health services as our regular benefits package to employees, and we promote that with them. Or it could mean we talk about mental health within our staff meetings and provide people with information and an opportunity to discuss mental health in our staff meetings. Or it could mean, we overall talk, provide people with information and opportunity to exercise mental health activities at work. So it could mean a variety of different things. But certainly, It's something for us to begin to think about a little bit more. And if your organization hasn't yet had the opportunity to do that, you might first survey your employees, have some small groups with them, in your one-on-one discussions with them. Ask them, like, what resources would you find valuable as you're, working in your daily life or working on a day-to-day basis? What would be helpful to you to maintain both health and mental health, physical and mental health wellness? Because this particular generation does not see as distinctive a difference that many generations see from mental health wellness and physical health wellness. The two are very intertwined and really are very much on the same level of importance. And that's not true for every generation. So it's something to keep in mind as you're creating those opportunities for wellness. It's not just about having a walking campaign to count your steps that you've been taking together as a group. It can also mean, have we provided enough space and opportunity for people to be able to recharge after a very large project that we'd completed? A good example is we had a very busy spring semester here in Parkland in my division, and we are taking the next couple weeks to wrap up some pieces that we need to wrap up for those, and then start to plan for the next bit that we'll have to do in the fall. And what that does is kind of give us some space to gain a little bit more grounding, to give us a little bit more mental health space, but being very intentional about that as a supervisor and saying, you guys have had a rough go of it. It's been very heavy lift for you on some of these projects. And so we're going to take a minute to let our brains heal a little bit. And using that kind of verbiage is super important for this generation. They want to know that you're taking into consideration their mental health well-being.
Paige says that Carl has a total reward survey to help identify what is the most important to their team members regarding benefits. I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea.
I think it can be as simple too as whenever people come to work sick, making them leave and meaning it.
Yeah,
and
tell
really
them they can go home.
yes, but really having that culture where people know they can call off.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. I think it's super important of how you build your culture, and the words that you use are really important. I use I talk about a culture of failure, and it's important for people to be able to, as we're talking earlier about giving people an opportunity to grow. It's also okay to sometimes fail because you're trying new things and you're trying hard things. And so the expectation is that not everything is going to turn out perfectly, but you provide people with an opportunity to grow and be successful. And sometimes failure is success because you're going to learn from that. So, how you talk about things and how you talk about problems, is a really great point, Anastasia, that, being very intentional about using those sick days because it's what's best for you and best for the organization. A couple things I just wanted to touch on before we end for the day, and I know we're just past the hour here. A couple resources that I think are must-haves that I think are really, really great. One is Glad We Met, which is a book about one-on-one meetings, and it really gives you at the end, gives you a guide to also provide to the individual that you're meeting with about how to meet well in those one-on-ones. It gives you the how-to of it, but also the why behind the how-to. So I would highly recommend this book if you do have regular one-on-one meetings with people, and then giving that information so that they can understand how best to use those one-on-one interactions with you. And that is really the whole bent of the book, is that when you're having a one-on-one meeting, it should be your employees' meeting and not your meeting. Your meeting is when you have those staff meetings to impart information or to give direction, but the one-on-one meeting should really be about them coming to you and wanting to develop whatever it is that they need to develop. So it's a great book, highly recommend it. The other one is the Connection Blueprint. And this is a great guide of topics and questions on a very curated sort of schedule that you can use for your one-on-one meetings as well to help generate conversation. So it can be on any kind of topic, but there's anything from like what ways do you like to communicate and how can we incorporate that into what we do, to, what are your goals and things that you want to accomplish. There's all kinds of things and I highly recommend that book. And then finally, these are a few sources that I cited during our time together today that will be included in the slides when they're uploaded. So with that, we're here at the end, and I can hang on for just a few seconds here for you to ask any questions that you might have. But if you, oops. There we go. But if you need to jet, then I totally understand that, and we're super excited.
Thanks for sticking around, Anna. I think we've lost everyone else since we went
Yeah,
over
I
the
think
hour.
so. I think everybody's lunch was over. But Anna, you're like in it to win it here.
Well, it's just so fun, right? I love the topic, and you guys are
So
so
do
good.
I.
You have so many cool things you're talking about. Good job.
Oh, thanks. I
That was
appreciate that.
amazing.
This is my favorite topic. I love this topic. Yeah, I love it. So we have to get together with you. I haven't talked and seen you for a while, so we'll have to get together.
It's been months. I'd love to. Absolutely.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, we'll work on that.
Okay, sounds
All right.
fantastic. Good talking to you guys.
All right,
Have
take
a
care.
wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have
you
a good
too.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.